This PTZ is big, it's beefy, and best of all, it's fully NDAA compliant. You are looking at the IPC6622SR-X33-VF. This is a full-size PTZ, full HD 1080p 2 megapixel resolution. Did I mention this camera is NDAA compliant? Let's talk about that. But first, let me put this down because it's really heavy. Whew, much better. All right, in this video, we're going to be talking about the specs and the benefits of the IPC62, that PTZ. We'll talk a little bit about NDAA compliance and why this camera is such a big deal. After that, we are going to move into a full demo, including an unboxing, an installation, a tour of the web interface, and finally, we are going to see some sample footage from some real-life installations. So let's jump right into this review. This PTZ has everything that you would expect to see on a full-sized PTZ. It's got a full HD resolution, 2 megapixel, 1080p. It's got a full 360-degree pan, a 90-degree to -15-degree tilt. The zoom on this camera is incredible, with a lens focal length ranging from 4.5 millimeters to 148.5 millimeters. This PTZ has an epic 33 times zoom factor. The frame rate on this camera is amazing. At its highest resolution of 1080p, this camera shoots at a whopping 60 frames per second. That means no matter what you're recording, this camera is going to record it all in super silky smooth motion. This is a light hunter PTZ, meaning the low light performance on this camera is excellent. You're going to see more colors with less noise, and your colored feeds are going to last longer than your standard IP cameras. But even in no light, this camera has excellent performance with a 500-foot IR range. Yep, that's right, 500 feet. That deep learning artificial intelligence means that this camera is going to effectively differentiate between movement caused by human beings, movement caused by vehicles, and negligible movement caused by animals or shifting shadows. It supports all the basic intelligent events like line crossing, intrusion detection, region entrance, and region exit. It even supports human face detection, which is nice to see on a PTZ like this. This camera works with all Uniview NVRs via plug and play. You can also use this as a standalone camera, since it does have a micro SD card slot capable of holding up to 256 gigs of internal storage. Now let's take a moment to talk about what NDAA compliance is and why it's such a big deal that this camera in particular is compliant with the NDAA. If this is your first time hearing the phrase NDAA compliance and you have absolutely no idea what that means, I'm not going to go too far down that rabbit hole in this video, so just be sure to check out that NDAA compliance video, or we also have a blog post if you'd rather read about it. In a nutshell, the 2019 NDAA created a ban list of security equipment for US federal government facilities. The ban list is pretty short and it only covers a few manufacturers. However, the manufacturers that it does cover do take up a pretty good chunk of the video surveillance industry. Now today we're talking about a Uniview camera. The brand and surveillance manufacturer Uniview does not appear on this ban list. However, until recently, most Uniview cameras and recorders did contain a SoC, a system on a chip, that was manufactured by HiSilicon, that is owned by Huawei, that does appear on this government ban list. Luckily for us, Uniview acted very quickly and started producing fully NDAA compliant cameras and recorders. These are security products that were built without that HiSilicon chip, meaning there are no components of these cameras manufactured by anyone on the NDAA ban list. So why is it such a big deal that we have a fully NDAA compliant PTZ? Well, when Uniview started producing their NDAA compliant product line, it was a little rudimentary. You know, there was a really good reason that most security products used that HiSilicon chip for so long, because it was a really good chip. It was powerful, it could do a lot, It allowed the Uniview cameras to have all of those incredible intelligent events. When Uniview switched over to the M-Star chips in order to have NDAA compliant cameras, they were a little bit less powerful. They couldn't do as much, they didn't have as many features. This time last year, when Uniview was first starting to come out with their NDAA compliant product line, the thought of seeing a full-size PTZ with a ton of intelligent events, with deep learning, with 60 frames per second video, with an ultra 33 times zoom, with a 500-foot IR range, was inconceivable. But now, here we are living the dream.
Inconceivable! You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
So if you are a security installer, if the NDAA is important to you, then take this camera as a good sign that your future, that Uniview's future, and the future of the video surveillance industry as a whole is bright. I hope you guys are as excited to see this camera in action as I am, because now it's time to jump into our unboxing. All right, we've got our PTZ box here, and you can see it is a pretty good size. Again, this is a full-size PTZ, nice and big. Let's go ahead and open this guy up. The first thing you'll see is your little baggie that comes with your quick start guide, and it also has your weatherproof grommet in there. And we also have the hex wrench in here for tightening and loosening the screws on your camera. Next up, we have our 24-volt power supply, and here we have our mounting adapter. Installation for this PTZ is really easy, which we will see later on in this video. Simply screw this threaded part into your PTZ mount. You slide and lock the PTZ down here, tighten it up with that hex wrench that came included in the baggie, and you're good to go. And underneath all of that, we have our PTZ. All right, this thing it's pretty heavy, and a nice thing about this PTZ is that it comes fully assembled. You know, sometimes you buy these big giant PTZs and you have to put a bunch of pieces together. This PTZ is ready to go out of the box. So here we can check out the pan. We've got an endless 360-degree pan. We've got a 90-degree to a negative 15-degree tilt. You can see that it's not 90 to 0. It does go up just a little bit to that 15 degrees. We have a 33 times optical zoom lens. We have our IR windows here. We have 2 IR windows, and they produce up to 500 feet IR range. And if I take the very back of the camera here and unscrew this, there is a slot for a micro SD card in here. You don't need an NVR to use this. If you want to use this as a standalone security camera, you totally can. Just record everything directly to the SD card there inside the camera. And I'm gonna go ahead and speed this clip up so you don't have to watch me unscrew this whole thing. All right, and this just comes completely off. And we can see the inside of the camera there. And the micro SD card slot is right here. Not sure if you can see that very well. You just slide your card in there and you're good to go. I like this design. It's nice and hidden. It's not, visible to somebody passing by. So somebody's not gonna be able to come up here and easily just take that SD card out, and they probably won't even know it's in there. The SD cards that are a little bit difficult to get to, obviously they are harder to work with, but I think in the long run, they are a little bit more secure. Now before we take this out and install it, let's take a look at this pigtail and see what cable connections we have available to us. First, this is an IP camera, so obviously we have our Ethernet connection here for you to hook up to. This camera can run on power over Ethernet, but if you don't have a PoE switch or an NVR, or if you just prefer to hardwire the power, you can do that here. We do have a 24-volt DC connection and our ground cable. Next up, we have our RS485 wires here. This is for if you need to hardwire this to a PTZ remote control. And we have our alarm in and out connections here to hardwire this to your alarm. And we do also have audio in and out wires here. In addition to the Cat5 Ethernet connection, which will connect this to your network, we also have a BNC video out connection if you need to connect this to a spot monitor or anything like that. This thing is a beautiful PTZ, and I'm about to install it right here in our production room on this little demo setup that we have. But first, before we do that, I do have a favor to ask you. If this video has been helpful so far, please be sure to give it a like down below. It helps us know what kind of content our audience is wanting to see, and it really helps us to make this channel better. That said, let's jump into the installation. So let's go ahead and install this thing, and for this, we are going to need just the hex wrench that came included in the package, and we'll also need the mount adapter here. And this is going to be really easy to install, easier than most PTZs, since everything here comes in one full piece. You don't have to assemble anything. The first step is going to be to take your mount adapter and just unscrew these hex screws a little bit to loosen this up so that we don't have to do this once it's all installed. Just loosen these a little bit. You don't have to take them all the way out. And once that's loosened, you can look inside there, make sure everything's out of the way. And how it's going to work, if you can see in there, you're going to take the PTZ, which has these two little screws here poking out of the side. Those two screws are going to go through these slots here, and you're going to be able to turn it until it hits that screw right there, the Phillips head screw, which you can leave screwed in. Don't unscrew that one. Just leave it in there so that you'll know where to stop. Once it's in there, we'll screw these back down. But first, let's get this screwed into our mount over there, which is a Uniview mount. We have a couple of these on our website. If you want to see which mounts are compatible with this PTZ, you can just visit the product page, and associated with the product page, we have all of the compatible mounts. So here, I'm just going to take the Ethernet cable, feed this through, and simply screw this in. I've already loosened these screws up here. If you haven't, you might need to loosen those first, and then just screw it in like this. Once you have that screwed in place, depending how your mount works, you can screw it back in, tighten it up, make sure everything is nice and tight. Now, there's a couple of different ways we can install this PTZ. The easiest way is just through Power over Ethernet. This is compatible with the IEEE 802.3 AT PoE standard. That's also known as PoE Plus, which if you have a PoE switch or an NVR with a PoE switch in the back from Nelly Security, maybe it's an IP Cam Power PoE switch or a Uniview PoE switch or NVR, those are all going to support PoE Plus, so you should be good there. The only thing you might be careful of is if you have one of our single port PoE injectors from IP Cam Power, just double check that you have the AT version and not the AF version, because the AF version is only going to produce 15 watts of power, whereas the AT version, you'll get that full 30 watts. This PTZ does consume up to 30 watts of power, so you will need that PoE Plus. However, this will work with just PoE Plus. We have some PTZs that require even more than 30 watts of power, and so you have to get our BT switches for that, or PoE++. You don't need that for this PTZ, you just need that 30 watts of power coming out of a PoE port. All right, so let's get our camera ready to install. The first thing we'll want to do is take this little carabiner on this safety cable, and we will want to hook it up here. There's a little hole here on the mount. So we will just take this cable and feed it through just like that. And we can let it go now, and it will support the weight of the entire PTZ. This is going to make it a lot easier for you, especially when you're standing up 50 feet high on an extension ladder. Just hook this in there. You don't have to worry about dropping the PTZ. You don't have to handle the extra weight. Once that's hooked up there, we're going to take the pigtail of the PTZ. Again, we have all these extra connections if you need them for audio, alarms, that kind of thing. We're just going to hook this up directly to our Ethernet cable. If you're not using PoE, you will need to go ahead and run your power cable as well, your 24-volt power supply, and hook that into this terminal here. We're not doing that, we're just using PoE, so let's shove this stuff up here in this mount. And now we're just going to pull this camera up there Again, take these screws, slip it in those slots, and we're just going to turn the camera until it hits that screw there to stop it, and we'll let go. There we go, the camera is in there. It just needs to be tightened now. So we'll take our hex wrench again and tighten this sucker up. Now that it's in there nice and tight, I'm going to go ahead and turn on this NVR that I have it connected to. That should supply the PTZ with network connectivity from the NVR, as well as power connectivity from that PoE switch, and we will see it start to move around here in a second. And there we go, it looks like this thing is connected to power, everything is good to go. So now let's jump on the web interface and play around with this thing and see what we can do with it. Alright, so as you can see, I am now logged into the web interface here, and let's go ahead and check this out. We have, this is the main live view. You can see as I move the mouse over to the edges of the screen, it turns into these little arrows telling me I can move the PTZ around. So let's go ahead and do that. If I click all the way over to the left, the PTZ starts to move to the left, and I have our handy dandy PTZ cam here to show us what's happening. And if I move it to the right, it's going to move to the right. Again, this has endless 360-degree pan, so I can just sit here and go around and around and around. And it does have a 90-degree to negative 15-degree tilt. So if I start all the way down here at the bottom, we are at 90 degrees here. But then I can come all the way up to the top to be about here, roughly at 0 degrees, but then it can go even higher than 0 degrees. Let me turn it towards the camera so you can see that a little bit better. Here is 0, here is that negative 15. So it can actually look up a little bit, has a nice and wide field of view, which is really cool. Something I didn't know about Uniview PTZs that I feel like I probably should have known by now is when you click on the screen to move the PTZ, the speed is actually relative to where on the screen you're clicking. Let me show you what I mean by that. If I click all the way over to the very edge of the right, you can see the PTZ is just going to fly pretty much at its fastest speed here. But if I just click right here towards the middle of the screen, right when my mouse turns into an arrow, it's going to move real slow, just like that. I actually didn't know this feature existed. I don't know if I just haven't been observant enough or if this is a new thing for Uniview, but I quite like it. It allows for more natural movement, I guess, when you're clicking around here on the screen. Obviously, if you're using these arrows over here, you can use this slider to change the speed of the PTZ. So you can go really fast, or you can go really slow like this. But I kind of prefer this method of just clicking around here on the screen itself to naturally and adaptively change the speed on the fly. Anywho, let's talk about the zoom. 33 times zoom. And you're not going to be able to tell really how well the zoom is here inside in our production room. That is why I do have some clips for you of this actually installed outside, which I will insert here in a little bit. But I can use my mouse wheel to zoom. Let me zoom into my face here, see how close I can get. It looks like that's about as high up as I can go. So let's find something else to zoom in on. Let's zoom in on this box here, see if we can read some of the fine print on there. There we go. So that is the 33 times zoom. Now I'm zooming out here. I've forgotten what the specs are for this. Let's Google it. This is all stuff I should have researched before hitting record, but hey, this is all part of the process, right? So the lens goes from 4.5 millimeters zoomed all the way out to 148.5 millimeters zoomed all the way in. So here we are at 4.5, and now I can also click over here to zoom all the way in here at this, 148.5 millimeters. So that's got a nice dynamic zoom range here, nice and wide field of view, whether you're panning, whether you're tilting. It's great. It's a fantastic PTZ. So let's jump into the menu. This is exactly what you'd expect to see in a Uniview camera. Everything's the same, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here. If you guys are curious, you can go check out some of our other Uniview videos where we do dive into the web interface a little more deeply. I do want to check out some of these PTZ controls just to show you what we have available to us. This could be helpful if, say, you have this set up to a remote control and maybe the joystick gets pushed over slightly and the camera's just spinning and spinning and spinning and nobody's making it do that. You can have this timeout set so that after 10 seconds of spinning around, it's just going to shut off those PTZ controls. We can set up a home position and have this either a preset or a patrol or a recorded route. We can make this a preset. Let's say we want the home position to be my face. After being idle for 60 seconds here, it will immediately jump back to my face. We can change this to 5 seconds just so we can see it in action. So yeah, there it is right there. If I come over here to my warning label and we can chill out here for 5 seconds and we can start reading that. And then, yeah, that did not feel like 5 seconds. That was very fast. You get the picture. We have PTZ limits here if for some reason you don't want to take advantage of that full 360-degree pan. Maybe you're setting this up for your employees and you want them to have limited access. You can limit that however you need to. We can set this up with a remote control, and you can check out the link in the description. I will leave a video to our Uniview PTZ remote control so you can check that out. That does actually work with the NVR and not with the individual PTZ, but it's a really cool product. Go check that out and see if that's something that you'd be interested in. Let's go ahead and jump right into our intelligent event menu, and I'll show you what we can do over here. Because again, this camera does come with deep learning artificial intelligence. Go check out our other videos on that. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about what that is. Essentially, if we set up a line cross detection here, we can set this up so that we can specifically target motor vehicles. Well, I have to draw one first. If I draw a line here, we can set this up to recognize either motor vehicles, non-motorized vehicles, pedestrians, or any combination of these three. And you can see that right now the camera does have this green box around me every once in a while. Like right there, you can see that is the camera telling us that it's recognizing me as a person. If I had a bicycle in here, or I don't know, a motor vehicle, this would be a different color based on what the camera recognizes us to be. We can change the filter types here. So if I wanted the camera to know that pedestrians shouldn't be this big, I can change the max size and the min size if I need to. I can adjust the sensitivity of this intelligent event. Let's save this and go back to our live view, because a cool thing to note here is we can see the line here. If you can't see the line, come into setup, click here on local parameters, and make sure intelligent mark and untriggered event are enabled, and then head back to the live view, and that's when you'll be able to see the event markers. And if you have untriggered target selected, you'll also be able to see these green boxes around people and vehicles, whether or not they cross that line. But something I want to point out here is we do have this cross line detection right here on the door. If I move the PTZ over to the left, you can see the line crossing detection. It stays right there attached to that door, which is a really cool feature, because even when you have your line crossing detection enabled or your intelligent events enabled, you don't have to worry about keeping the PTZ in one place. You can move it around wherever you need to, and the PTZ is going to remember right where those intelligent events are. At this time, this PTZ does not have auto tracking, so if we hop into our intelligent event menu, open up our line crossing and head to trigger actions, the only thing we can do with this is trigger a recording or an image right to the SD card slot. We can trigger alarms, we can trigger an email to be sent, and obviously if you have this set up with an NVR, you have more triggers than that based on recording this channel recording other channels, that kind of thing. But there is no auto tracking on this PTZ, which is something to note. We've covered a lot of ground in this video, but we are not done yet. We're just about to check out some demo footage from a real-life installation, but I want to hear from you. So let me know in the comments below what you think about this NDAA compliant PTZ. Now let's check out some more sample footage. And that, my friends, is the Uniview NDAA compliant full-size PTZ. If you have any questions that I didn't answer in this video, feel free to leave a comment or reach out to us via a phone call or an email. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I will see you next time.